mishandled.
A DHS watchdog reviewing the nation's evacuation effort known as Operation Allies Welcome, offering this stunning assessment. Quote, "We determined some information used to vet evacuees through the U.S. government databases, such as name, date of birth, identification number, and travel document data, was inaccurate, incomplete, or missing." The DHS acknowledges that individuals who could, quote, pose a risk to national security may in fact have been let into the country.
Fox's Kevin Cork. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
A federal judge awaits a list of names from both the Justice Department and former President Trump's attorneys of people they'd suggest to be appointed as special master to oversee the evidence seized in the Mar-a-Lago raid.
In her order, Judge Eileen Cannon, the district judge down in Florida, said not only must DOJ accept a special master, but DOJ cannot use those documents seized from Mar-a-Lago in the investigation until the special master is done. The Washington Post out with a big report late last night saying that former President Trump kept a document that had the nuclear capabilities of an unnamed foreign country in his possession at Mar-a-Lago. That document now in the possession of the U.S. government. The Post reports some of the top secret documents taken from the resort have information so sensitive that only the president, members of his cabinet, and a few others were allowed to see.
Fox's David Spont, the Trump legal team criticizing the Justice Department for the continuing leaks in the case. Fast food restaurant owners in California are now trying to block a new state law that sets minimum wages and working conditions for their employees, filing a referendum request to potentially put the issue on the ballot. A federal judge in Texas has ruled that required coverage of an HIV prevention drug under the Affordable Care Act violates a Texas employer's religious beliefs. An outbreak of the bird flu is impacting another state.
This recent case of the bird flu is confirmed at an egg-laying farm in Defiance County, Ohio, and now this farm has the grim task of euthanizing its entire flock. There had been a lull in bird flu cases across the Midwest, but now the experts are saying it's back, and it's back big. Over the past week, new cases have been detected not only in Ohio, but Indiana, Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin also. Several detections have been made in the West. So far this year, some 43 million chickens and turkeys have been killed because of this disease, and that affects the prices of eggs and meat. John Saucier, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
And a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. At least not so long as I got anything to say about it. I got something to say about it every afternoon at 4. And I'm going to keep saying it. I don't want government officials to forget it. Okay, so here we are, another exciting, elucidating, educational episode of Tall Tales. We're getting close to the end of the week here. Jose and I are dreading that weekend, but we got the rest of today and all of tomorrow before we have to go into hibernation. So let's go over to Zemi Cutney and see what the Daily News is running instead of an editorial. Here's what they say. Our view, election coverage, debates, forums provide insight for voters. I'd have never thought of that in a million years.
The more you know.
Verbal jab here, comeback there. Calling out decisions made 15 years ago. Questioning pandemic decisions made 2 years ago. Comparing tax refund payment timelines and comparing records for new school construction. This was the exciting stage of debate-style rhetoric set by Guam's general election gubernatorial candidates. 2 candidates vying for the same office. One a current governor, one a former governor, both with very public records to research and review when deciding who to cast your vote for come November 8. I would have said for whom to cast your vote on November 8. Because, you know, you're not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition. Who are you going to vote for? And, of course, that reminds me of the famous Winston Churchill quotation when someone corrected him for ending a sentence in a preposition. Winston Churchill said, "Sir, that is nonsense, up with which I will not put." Did not end the sentence in a preposition. The Guam Chamber of Commerce on Wednesday hosted a gubernatorial candidate forum for its general membership. The 2-hour-long forum gave Governor Leon Guerrero and former Governor Felix Calvo a chance to demonstrate their speech and debate skills against one another while shining the spotlight on their records and achievements. There is a lot of information for us as voters to consider when we make these decisions. The public records are available for review, as are news stories, public documents, laws, amendments, other documents, and tall tales that can prove or disprove the facts our candidates personally present to us. Are they able to be truthful about their records? Are they able to acknowledge their weaknesses and failures? These forums present voters with critical opportunities to see for themselves who our candidates are. For the insightful, they will pick up on smaller personality cues like the demeanor, tone of voice and confidence. Now, who did that very thing yesterday, Jose? Right here on Tall Tales.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For Guam's more active pundits, these forums give us a chance to fact-check and cross-reference the claims made by candidates regarding their accomplishments and failures.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, that's no fun at all.
I'm for the former.
Yeah. Thousands of voters will have the opportunity to participate in the sacred right to choose who will lead Guam. Here we go with sacred again, Jose. Yeah. The information on our candidates is literally at our fingertips. And a phone call or a Freedom of Information Act request away. So long as you don't get mixed up with the legal department down at Adelup, who will turn. They have a department down there at Adelup. When you send in a sunshine, they have a department down there called the Mountain Building Department. And there's a sign on the door that says, "Got any molehills?"
How long's that wait time?
Yeah. You got any molehills? They'll make them into mountains for you. Thousands of voters will have the opportunity, as you were. We are, as constituents, have the power to choose our leadership thoughtfully. Review the records, forums, debates, public documents carefully. Listen to Tall Tales every day. Our gubernatorial candidates are not unknown hopefuls with a dream and a platform. They are public servants with public records. Vote with knowledge and purpose. Well, not a bad editorial. Okay, now, because the Post doesn't run editorials, and because the Post has fired all of its columnists, and they've gone into a rotation, I'm going to pick on the people in the rotation when I feel it's appropriate. Today, it's the turn of Dulce Amor Imbo to be in the box. Dulce Amor, sweet love. What a name. Wow. So here's what Dulce Amor tells us. The title is Jungling the World. As a proud graduating member of the G3 Conservation Corps second cohort, I almost stopped reading right there, Jose, because I knew what was coming. Sustainability. Or as we like to call it, the second season, I bore witness to the obstacles and disheartening moments we have overcome and the achievements we have made in our 5-month tenure. While I believe the metrics that we have achieved are critical to continuing the work, today I would like to talk about what the data may not show, but nonetheless illustrate this program is indeed transformative. Now, just to remind you, this is not Kamala Harris. This is somebody from UOG. The Conservation Corps has not only seen more than 55,000 aluminum cans collected and recycled, over 2,000 trees planted, and more than 600 bags of trash picked up, but it has also changed the very lives of its 12 members. You know, if they're out there doing stuff like that, you know what I'd like to see them do, Jose? I'd like to see them get involved with the semi-annual deforestation project of Marine Corps Drive between Dededo and Jigo.
Oh, yeah. That's been on a 10-year hiatus?
Well, I think it's twice a year. That's the semi-annual deforestation project.
Mm.
And you'll notice that they've started, but they've done a horrible job so far. You know, you can't cut down some of the grass, some of the weeds, some of the time. You got to cut it all down. And, you know, what you really ought to do is maintain it. When I went to the Hilton meeting at the Hilton the other day, I drove back home up San Vittoris Drive, not because it was the best way or the short, but just because I like to do it once in a while. And we take good care of that street. It looks nice. And why do we do that? Because we've got tourists down there. But if it's just us, the hell with it. Just let the boonies come right out and start hanging over the pavement. What the heck? It's just the boonies. After all, this is Guam. Who cares, right? And the road between Dededo and Jigo is a disgrace. Year in, year out, it's a disgrace. I may write a letter to the Visitors Bureau saying, whatever you do, don't encourage anybody, any tourists, to drive up Marine Corps Drive north of Dededo, because it does not look nice. So
there is a quote-unquote attraction in Jigo, too, that I think a lot of tourists go to.
Japanese.
Mm-hmm. It's a peace memorial, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the grounds are not that bad there, but the road up there?
It's just awful, yeah. And then along the same lines, I wrote a letter to the Director of Public Works about Lake Areola. I think I mentioned that the other day. I ought to bring the letter in here. You know, when Lake Areola is at high tide, it's a menace because no one wants to turn right and drive through the lake. So people who want to turn right use the left lane to turn right. People who use that road every day know what's going on. They don't want to sit there for 3 lights, so they pull into the empty right lane to make their left turn. It's just chaotic. Well, it's low tide at Lake Areola now, and you can see that there are even deeper fissures in the lake bottom than there were before. So my advice to the Director of Public Works, Vince Areola, Vince, you need to get on this really soon, because if you don't, when high tide comes, if you want to do any work up there, you're going to need scuba divers.
Well, James Cameron might come out there and do a dive.
Exactly. Yeah. What's the name of the
trench?
Yeah, there's the trench and the Calypso. Remember?
Calypso, yeah, Jacques Cousteau.
Yeah, Jacques Cousteau. I think his son is still doing that. That's what we're going to need to plumb the depths of Lake Areola if he doesn't do something quick. So, you know, there's something in it for him. I could see the Vince Areola Memorial Toll Bridge, or if they decide to go with ferry boats instead, one of the ferry boats could be the SS Vince Areola. Got to do something there. Anyhow, back to jungling the world. The Conservation Corps has not only seen more than 55,000 aluminum cans collected and recycled, over 2,000 trees planted, and more than 600 bags of trash picked up, but it has also changed the lives of its 12 members. Changed their lives. I hope my cohort remembers these 3 things as we go our separate ways. Number 1, be rooted in your truth. Be rooted in your truth. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but I know that Bank Pacific is a little different from other banks because other banks spread branches, but Bank Pacific grows roots. Be rooted in your truth. Sustainability starts with our own lives by knowing and understanding our own story, our own truth. The past 5 months has allowed us to deepen our self-understanding and to reflect on who we are as individuals and to explore our own healing and use that to propel us in the work we do. As Chamorro artist Rolde Ablau had told us, heal the self, heal the planet, heal the self. Now, I wonder if this is one of these things, you know, where you can do a webcast, you know, pay $25 for a webcast for one of these wonderful be-all-you-can-be type self-improvement plans, Jose. It's kind of sounding like that, isn't it? Okay, so in rule number 1, be rooted in your truth. Rule number 2, reforest your mind. I'm afraid I know too many people who have too much forest in their minds.
Some fill them with trees.
This phrase has arisen from the realm of climate justice. Wow, climate justice, Jose. Can you play that sound effect? I'll read it again. I want to hear that. Whoa. The phrase had risen from the realm of climate justice. Yeah. And it means to reforest our dreams, our relationships, our solidarity, our centrality. Centrality. Now, I think Helen Middlebrook's column is called Mom in the Middle. I wonder if Helen could write about... No, I wouldn't wish that on Helen. Helen's too good at what she does. Centrality and the future, just as we reforest the Badlands of Guam. I don't think anybody has ever tried to reforest the Badlands of Guam. And I hope no one ever does. It's a pretty distinct terrain feature. You need a motorcycle to get down there, Jose.
The Badlands.
The Badlands. Up on the high ground. It's really interesting. You'd forget for the moment where you are. It looks like you are.
I picture a skull of a carabao right next to an old...
Well, barren red clay. And it feels very much like the southwestern part of the U.S. Now, she goes on to say, in order to become the change that we want to see in the world, we must first reimagine the kind of world we want to live in, educating ourselves and asking questions along the way. Here's rule number 3. Let us jungle the world. I learned something new today, Jose. I didn't know that jungle could be a verb. Let's see if we can conjugate it. I jungle, you jungle, he, she, it. Better yet, they jungle.
They.
We jungle, you jungle, they jungle. Yeah, let us jungle the world. I borrow this quote from my fellow member, Hilaan. I don't know what Hilaan means, but I know that Hila, you have a Hila, Jose. Yeah. Once in a while when you were young and something displeased you, you stuck it out. And your mom said, don't you stick out your tongue, Jose Martinez. Am I right on that one?
I think so. That's a Hila?
Hila. Mm-hmm. I borrow this quote from my fellow member, Hilaan, who continues to carve Chamorro people into the future with his work as a cultural artist. We must step away from the conventional narrative of seeing jungles as unruly, uncontrollable places where people live in uncivilized or primitive ways. To acknowledging jungles as spiritual spaces they really are. Wow, this is really impressive, Jose. I'm going to read this every night before I go to sleep. I'm sure it'll do the trick. It is to calibrate our relationship with nature. When was the last time you calibrated your relationship with nature, Jose? Be truthful now. Be honest.
Every morning when I wake up.
Oh, okay.
And then I close that door to the... Never mind.
It is to recalibrate our relationship with nature, with the living world. The jungles show us abundance, the beauty of diversity, and the sacredness of the bond between us and nature. In jungling the world, we center our work on indigenous wisdom, island wisdom, and working toward a more sustainable future for our island and for our earth. So again, Be rooted in your truth. Reforest your mind and jungle the world. Because, as the Hopi prophecy stated, we are the ones we've been waiting for. This was spoken nationally by that memorable Hopi named Barack Obama.
The Hopi?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole Hopi saying, so I guess all this stuff about Africa is just, just a pipe dream. He was really born in the Hopi reservation. And then I've heard that one before. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Yeah. Okay, a little bit about Dulce Amor Imbo. Now, remember when they said they were going to fire their regular columnists and go more towards diversity and inclusion? I think they rang the bell with Dulce Amor Imbo. She's a student pursuing a master's degree in counseling. I think she took the opportunity to counsel us, Jose. A master's degree in counseling at the university and a recent graduate of Guam Green Growth Conservation Corps. She is a mental health advocate working toward a more sustainable lifestyle. She hails from the village of Manilo. Okay, are you listening over there, Michelle Bettis and Henry Titano, general manager? Give us back Lee Weber. I don't need this kind of stuff. If I need this kind of stuff, I'll go to that guy. What's his first? Tony Robbins or someplace like that. First of all, in order to write a column, you have to know how to write. And second, in order to write a column, you have to have something to say. This one does not, no, it doesn't do it. It's not there. Okay, let's take a short break, Jose, and we'll jump into the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Does your physical workplace have an impact on the mental outlook of workers, their overall job satisfaction, and their productivity? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about that and what you might want to do about it. It's The Extra Point here on 93.3.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So here we are, and I'm looking at the stack, and I've got Frenchie on the line, and Frenchie wants to talk about a call of nature. Are you sure he wants to do that on the air? I don't know if FCC. Well, let's give it a shot. I guess I could always. Yeah, I may have to bleep you out, Jose. But Frenchie. But go ahead with your call of nature.
Yeah, if you want to wee-wee, it's the second door on your left.
Okay.
So no, I was reading Mrs. Sweet Love this morning. When I was preparing my breakfast, and I almost choked on my English muffin. I was laughing so much. Like you say, it takes a little bit of learning how to write in order to write the column. And what we're seeing right now is that, for quite a while now, the PDN was running boilerplate from USA Today and the Gannett News, and now they're slowly inching toward a more local centric, even though they are struggling, but a little more local-centric view. Now the Post is going woke on us, and maybe they haven't learned that going woke is going broke, like many companies are doing right now. But this kind of column is pretty pathetic, you know. I mean, it's amazing how, but this is not new. I mean, this environmental, the philosophy, the threat to the earth. We're all gonna die by September because of global warming and all those things. Is that new religion of the people that don't want to listen to God anymore? So they are pushing for Mother Earth. The Pope is doing it too, so why not? Mother Earth and how to save Mother Earth. Well, the best thing to do to save Mother Earth is to listen to her and not to all those people that are hyping the danger that is not real. We will show that, you know, it's just pure propaganda, and it really connected with me during the pandemic when we had the pandemic failed perfectly after that fear of global warming. We have the fear of the bug, and then now we had the fear of running out of energy, which is administered all over the Western world right now, explaining to us that we have to change our ways. We have to go to wind power, to solar power, to clean up. And those people at UOG that don't understand half of what's in front of their nose are trying to lecture us on the environment. I mean, you probably remember when you were a kid, you used to save your glass bottles and recycle them, and you used to do everything that is being told by the government how to do, people did on their own. I remember in my house, we didn't throw newspaper away because we used them either to start the fireplace or to put another layer between our sweater and our coats in the winter so we wouldn't catch cold. But, you know, we're going into that culture of government by fear, which will allow government to get bigger because the government becomes that all-knowing and all benevolent system which helps people to survive, but only to survive. And people don't understand, you know, during the pandemic, we saw the annihilation of thousands and tens of thousands of small business, and small business owners are free people. People that are on the payroll are not free people because they're always under the threat of losing their job. And that's exactly how you control people, by fear. So now we have the fear of the environment, the fear of the virus, the fear of energy, and now we have lecturing about the environment and the energy by a student that doesn't even start to comprehend what the challenges are. It's becoming ridiculous. So now the Post is being replacing PDN by running boilerplate from the Los Angeles Times, by Washington Post, both leftist newspaper, and by running poorly written column by teenagers that don't understand what the challenges really are, except for what has been spoon-fed to them by their teachers who are propagandists and nothing else.
I couldn't have said it better, Frenchie. You really laid it out for us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good talking to you as usual.
Thank you.
All righty. Yeah, Frenchie's exactly right. And you know, some of this stuff has almost a sacred dimension, Jose. It's as though we should do these things not because it will make our lives better, but it's for the earth.
Well, there's a certain irony, like what French was laying out, of all these things that we used to do because they were just, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So now it's almost like put on a pedestal as if it's some untouchable sacred right.
Yeah.
No, just do it.
Yeah.
Don't have to tell everybody you're doing it.
Yeah. So some of this environmental wackoism, don't do it for yourself, for the other people, but for the earth, as though the earth had a personality and a soul, and et cetera, instead of being the inanimate large ball that it is. Okay, taking a look at the card here, I've got to finish up marijuana versus the people, and then Keneal Weird strikes again. Yeah, Keneal Weird versus another windmill. And then I've got Calamity Jane versus Christians. And, I was going to use Ron McNinch's column, but for some reason I can't find it in the online edition. And I can't print from the e-edition, but I can print from the online edition. I couldn't find it. Did you read it yesterday or today? When was it?
It's in today's.
Can you bring it in?
You have a copy right there in front of you.
It's in today's?
In the PDN.
Oh, in the PDN. Oh, yeah, that's right. He's not in. No wonder I couldn't find it in the Post.
There you go.
The Post fired him. Yeah. Sure enough, here it is. My bad. Yeah. Okay. Well, since I've been talking about it, I'm going to start there. Okay. And Ron talks about in the 2002 elections, a felon named Jonathan Tovis was elected to the Education Board and wouldn't step down. So the legislature passed a law that barred felons from a number of offices and required police clearances for candidates, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to stop right there and pick that up. Right now, if you want to run for senator, village commissioner, whatever, you must present 2 pieces of paper, a police clearance and a court clearance. Now, the legislature has the ability to require that for mayors, commissioners, whatever you want to call them, the attorney general, the public auditor, but not for the governor, not for the lieutenant governor, and not for senators. You know why? Because the Organic Act spells out the qualifications for those offices. To be a senator, what you must do is you got to be 25 years old. You have to be a United States citizen, and you have to live on Guam for the 5 years immediately preceding the office you want to assume. That's it. Now, if you want police clearances, if that's going to be part of the qualifications, you'll notice that the Organic Act doesn't say it must possess a police clearance and a court clearance, which means that you can't add those to the Organic Act requirements by local law. There's an old case called Powell versus McCormick that I've gone into a couple times on the show that stands for that proposition. If there's a constitutional requirement to run for office, you can't change it by law. So this whole court clearance, police clearance thing is not organically act sound. In other words, it shouldn't be done. Now, not only is it contrary to the Organic Act, but stop and ask yourself, who does it help? Does it help the challenger who's got to go out and scrape up all these things? And it's, in order to perfect your place on the ballot, you got a lot of stuff to do in addition to collecting the signatures. So the more stuff you have to do to get on that ballot, the better it is for incumbents. Because if I wanted to do it, I'd have to go down, stand in line, pay the money, etc. You could spend probably 4 or 5 hours rounding up those 2 court clearances. Now, if you're not a government employee and you're not doing it on government time, that's a hardship. But for incumbents, for your senators, all they have to do is tell one of their tentago, hey, boy, go get me a police clearance and a court clearance. Here's a check. And that's it. Easy for them, hard for you, right? Hard for you, and not only hard, but ineffective. If you have a declaration under penalty of perjury where the person who says, I don't have felonies, I don't have crimes involving moral turpitude, I'm 25, I'm a U.S. citizen for 5 years, that should be enough. And when you catch somebody, lock them up. That's the way it ought to be done. Something else of the same nature. Everybody who starts collecting money has got to file all kinds of forms with the Election Commission, financial disclosure and reports and expenditure reports, et cetera, et cetera. You know what those reports look like? Of course not, because you know what you have to do if you want to take a peek at one? You got to go to the Election Commission. So what's the point? Why even do it? If you're not going to put them online, why bother? So you should put them online, and if they were online, then there are a lot of people who'd be very interested in what they said. Because, you know, if I were running against 14 other people, I would look online and I want to see their financial disclosures. One year, I actually did go down there and take a look. I was writing a column. And you know, it's a half day anyhow by the time you get down there and you get the stuff and you dig through it. It's not organized in a very user-friendly fashion. So I found out that Tina Rose Munya Barnes used $700 worth of campaign funds to buy tires for her car. Did you know that? Did you ever hear that?
No.
Yeah.
First time.
Yeah. So I suppose her thought process is, well, you know, when you're campaigning, you got to drive around a lot.
Need a new car?
Yeah.
Campaign.
Yeah. So, you know, if that kind of stuff were online, it would have two good results, provide for 2 good results. People wouldn't claim campaign money, wouldn't claim campaign expenditures to buy tires. And 2, every other candidate would be on those things, you know, with eagle eyes to see what the other guys are doing, to see if you can catch them doing something wrong.
What's the recourse for not filing?
There are penalties, and the Election Commission is the tribunal that assigns the penalties. But again, it's like the Civil Service Commission in political activities. It's inquisitorial, it's not adversary. And I went through a pretty good explanation of why inquisitorial doesn't work. Adversarial does. So if we're going to do that stuff, let's put it all online. Let's put all the forms that candidates have to file, put them online, get them up there. And let's do away with the court clearance and the police clearance. Now, the 2 times I ran, I knew that they were illegal. And I knew that if I'd filed suit, I could probably have them set aside. But, you know, I'd have to start an hour a year earlier. And, of course, the news of my campaign would be he wants to be a senator, but he doesn't want to do the police clearance thing. What is he, a criminal? What's he, you know, there would be no good politics in doing that. And I suspect that's the reason the things are still on the books. That, and because they tend to help the incumbents. The same way that not putting all of the papers, all of the financial disclosures online also helps the incumbents. Because, you know, once again, you got a staff, you know, here, you got an adding machine, put this together for me. Whereas you or I, and it's not easy work either, I can tell you that. So McNinch touched on these things in his column, and that's why I kind of wanted to get into it. He points out For over 25 years, I've taught public service ethics on Guam. All else equal, public employees should know laws and follow laws. Appointed leaders and board members should also know laws and follow laws. If you are a director of an agency or a board member of an agency, before you ever walk into that building, you must sit down and read the organic statute for your agency. Now, that used to mean you'd have to go to the law library and pull out the books. Not anymore. Guam Code had annotated is online, and it's really easy to find your way around in it.
Even I can do it.
Is it that easy, Jose?
That easy.
Whoa. Yeah, well, if you could do it, you could do a lot of things. So that should be something that you shouldn't even need to be told to do that. But I know of people in government that don't know what their own organic statute requires them to do or requires them not to do.
The CSC revealed that.
Exactly. Yeah, the HR guy who goes around trying to sell to fundraiser tickets to employees of the agency. Yeah, so good point, McNench. And he goes on to say, appointed leaders and board members should follow laws, yet it takes nearly $10,000 in legal work for an average citizen to get the legal help to enforce basic laws such as Freedom of Information Act requests. And he knows that because it cost me $10,000 to get Michael Bora to turn over papers that he had no reason withholding in the first place. The kind of the frosting on that cake, though, was that not only did I get my money back because the court awarded attorney's fees, but he had to pay $1,000 out of his own pocket. So directors, that's one law you ought to be really familiar with. Play fast and loose with the Sunshine Law, it may cost you $1,000. And of course, where did the $10,000 for cost and attorney's fees come from? From the budget from the Department of Land Management. That $10,000 would have been much better spent on the agency's real expenses, maintaining land records, etc. But, you know, something, I had an interesting experience today, Jose. I called an agency to get an email address. Now, there's something about agencies, they don't want to post email addresses on their websites or phone numbers. And what they do have is this, contact us. Then you put your name and your et cetera. Then you fill in a message and send no. When, challengers out there ought to be a requirement that every director's phone number and email is prominently displayed on the website. So anyhow, I called this agency and I said, guy answered the phone. I said, what's your website? Excuse me, well, what's the director's email? May I know your name, please? What difference does it make? I want the director's email address. Can you give it to me? Well, may I know your name, please? You know, that attitude, that question just tells you so much about the way that agency operates. How dare you ask us, do you think that anybody can write an email? And then when I said, well, I want the director's email. Well, please hold. I said, I don't want to hold. I want the damn address. I don't have all day to do this. Please hold. And then we went through it again. He said, well, I can give you the director's assistant's email address.
That's not what you asked for.
Of course not. It's not what I have an absolute right to have. So, you know, when you see attitudes like that, those attitudes are not self-generating. They come from somewhere. And it's not an ethical principle, but it comes pretty close. People who work for government agencies have a responsibility to help the public, members of the public, communicate with that agency. And don't ask dumb questions like, who are you? What's your name? Wow. Okay. So going back to the card, marijuana versus the people is the first thing on the card here. I'm not going to dwell on systemic racism today. I spent too much time dwelling on other things already. Yeah, let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to marijuana versus the people.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Okay, before I dive into marijuana here, I'm going to put Repeat on the line. And Repeat wants to talk about election requirements. Go for it, Repeat.
Yes, Uncle Bob, I just tuned in when you were talking about the police clearance and the court clearance thingamajig. And then you mentioned the name, Jonathan Tovis.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I arrested Jonathan Tovis back then. He did a bunch of thefts, and then it was a CSC, or a criminal sexual conduct. And this is all a matter of public record. But then he ran for the Ed board, I think it was, and he won. And so I alerted people about that. I said, hey, how can somebody be elected to public office when he's got these convictions on him? So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there. That name, very familiar with that guy. I arrested him probably 6 times.
Well, help out the international tailgater audience that's on Facebook. Do a photograph of the notch on your belt for Jonathan Tovis and send it in, and we'll post it. Okay, Repeat?
All right.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the heads up. Yeah. And you know, something else about that. So the guy got caught, and he paid the price for it. The other name that always comes up in this context is Matt Rector. Matt Rector, who had a criminal record in California, came out, was elected to the legislature, then decided he needed a gun permit. And in the process of doing that background check, they find, hey, wait a minute, this guy's got a criminal record. And this this all came forward, and Rector finally resigned under tremendous pressure to resign. And then, you know, then all of this stuff came up. But even if we had had those laws on the books at the time, his record was in California. There's no way that we're going to be able to get police clearances from every place a person's ever been. So it's a useless statute. And McNinch points out in his column that the legislature could have expelled Rector. Yes, the legislature can expel a member. Probably don't even need to have misconduct. Probably better if they do.
They're too busy checking their records.
Well, and doing resolutions.
Oh, resolutions.
Yeah. And so, you know, they had a meeting, and I suspect that the word was passed on to Rector. Rector, you can resign, or tomorrow we'll go into session and we'll expel you. Which would you prefer?
Yeah, I think he chose the right one.
Yeah. So he He was riding high for a while. He ran for president of the GFT, was president of the GFT. He was elected senator, and his office, he rented the GFT office building. So the government was paying rent to the Guam Federation of Teachers for rector's office. Somehow this passed without too much objection.
At least they weren't tires.
Yeah, and then finally it all came to a screeching halt for him, and rather than giving him a valedictory resolution, as he walked out the door, the sergeant at arms gave him a one-way ticket to Palookaville, where he probably is still residing. Yeah, along with Ray Tenorio out there somewhere in Palookaville. Okay, getting back to marijuana here, where I left off yesterday. The author here says that today's high-potency THC products, and especially if you're young, there's a good chance you'll eventually suffer a full psychotic break. 35% of young people who experience psychotic symptoms, according to another study, eventually have such an episode. The episode is intense paranoia. Yeah, now, of course, I knew a guy who smoked marijuana once upon a time, and I asked him about the paranoia. And he said, yeah, I'm kind of paranoid, but, you know, my paranoia wouldn't be quite as bad if there weren't so many people out to get me. So if you keep using after that episode of paranoia, you run a decent risk of ending up permanently schizophrenic or bipolar. Cannabis has by far the highest conversion rate to schizophrenia of any substance, higher than meth, higher than opioids, higher than LSD. 2 Danish studies, as well as a massive study from Finland, put your chances at close to 50%. 1 out of every 20 daily users can expect to develop schizophrenia if they don't quit. Dr. Christine Miller, an expert on psychotic disorders, told me. But quitting THC products of that potency is almost impossible, Steit said, comparing its addictive power to tobacco. And I can tell you from personal experience, it ain't easy to quit smoking cigarettes. I did it myself once upon a time. Nowadays, I would tell you this. If you offered me $1 million, I'd probably smoke a cigarette. If you offered me $1,000, I wouldn't touch it with somebody else's 10-foot pole. It's a poison. Quitting THC products of that potency is almost impossible, Steit said, comparing its addictive power to tobacco. The days of marijuana addiction being merely, quote, psychological are over. There's a definite withdrawal syndrome that includes irritability, anger, anxiety, massive cravings, can't sleep, can't eat. And I can't talk anymore because I got to take a break. Halftime show coming up.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A violent night in Memphis. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
This is no way for us to live. And it is not acceptable.
Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland on the shooting spree that's left at least 3 people dead and others injured Wednesday evening. A gunman driving around the city and live streaming some of his crimes.
Unlike other mass shootings where the gunman opens fire in a single crowded venue, this gunman was in constant motion throughout the city, and that made residents and visitors feel especially vulnerable.
Fox's Jonathan Sari in Memphis reports residents were told to shelter in place. A 19-year-old man arrested after crashing his car during a police chase. In court in Memphis Wednesday, the man accused of kidnapping and killing a schoolteacher last week.
The suspect in the abduction and murder of 34-year-old Eliza Fletcher ordered held without bond. Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy spoke with Fox Wednesday about the charges.
We would not be bringing these first-degree murder charges unless we were confident that we could prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt.
Fletcher's body was found Monday afternoon behind an abandoned home. She was positively identified Tuesday.
Fox's Laura Engel, a county administrator in Las Vegas, has been charged with the murder of a reporter who published critical articles about him prior to his primary election loss. Rob Tellis charged with the stabbing death of reporter Jeff Gearman. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police says they've caught the second suspect in Sunday's mass stabbings yesterday, but says Miles Sanderson died shortly afterwards from what was apparently a self-inflicted stab wound. Wildfire spreading in California. The deadly Fairview fire, about 80 miles southeast of L.A., grown to nearly 10,000 acres, only 5% containment. Firefighters say several communities are still threatened. The Radford fire in the Sierra Nevadas has charred 1,000 acres, only 2% containment. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglania from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Quam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
A Department of Homeland Security Inspector General's report says the Biden administration may have allowed national security threats into the country last year when they allowed plane loads of Afghan refugees into the country.
An Inspector General review of last year's massive Afghanistan evacuation, officially called Operation Allies Welcome, finds we determined some information used to vet evacuees through U.S. government databases, such as name, date of birth, identification number, and travel document data, was inaccurate, incomplete, or missing. We were told that wasn't possible. The Inspector General's report details faulty information, concluding as a result, DHS may have admitted or paroled individuals into the United States who pose a risk to national security and the safety of local communities.
Fox's Peter Ducey at the White House. The DHS says they would have taken action against any refugee on whom they had derogatory information. The White House and evidently many of its allies are watching what they call the Russian capture of Ukrainian civilians.
The action is referred to as filtration. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre describes it as efforts by Russia to capture and jail or deport those who disagree with Russia's claim to Ukraine. Jean-Pierre says the U.S. not only calls for the practice to stop, but also
allow the UN independent observers and humanitarian and human rights organizations access to these filtration sites and to those who have been sent to Russia.
Jean-Pierre says intel shows Russians using the sites to detain and interrogate Ukrainians as part of its annexation goal. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
A sheriff's deputy in Alameda County, California, has turned himself into police. Devin Williams Jr., accused of killing two people in their home in Dublin, California, southeast of Oakland, early yesterday. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Well, you know, here on Tall Tales, we do the halftime show every day. Jose does a really great job of putting out that halftime show. The drill team, the marching band, the acrobats, the synchronized card sections up in the stands, and then he also sells some T-shirts during the halftime show by running what we call the Rogues Gallery of tailgaters on the screen if you're watching on Facebook. You too can join that august group. All you need to do is buy a tailgater T-shirt. A couple of ways you could do that. You could, if you're on Facebook, there's a link right in the Facebook comments section. Click on that link and follow the link. Go to the beard, and you too can buy a tailgater T-shirt. We'll sell you the T-shirt, but the beard you got to grow on your own. And the other way is to go to a website called The Point, ThePoint.gu, thepoint.gu, and you can buy your T-shirt there. Same deal on the beards, though. We aren't selling any beards there either. So get your T-shirt. It'll come in the mail. It'll no longer than a week, sometimes shorter. Once you got your T-shirt, do a selfie and WhatsApp it to The Point at
671-797-8255.
Could you repeat that again?
Absolutely. That would be 671-797-8255.
797-8255, huh? Okay. And you do that, and then you can tell all your friends, hey, watch this really neat program. You'll see my picture on it. Yeah, you'll be able to not only enjoy the show, but you'll be able to secure bragging rights because your picture will be on international Facebook. All right, let me get back here to marijuana. I've got just a little more of this article to finish. It's harder to quit because so many users believe it's good for them. You know, all of these ads about, you know, the oil and marijuana is good for you and all the medicinal properties. And it's good for everything from chronic dandruff to athlete's foot and everything in between. And the article doesn't say this, but I'm going to add in myself. The cachet of smoking pot, especially bragging about it when you did it when you were younger. Yeah, we used to, you know, during... we'd sneak out of school. We sneaked out in the basement at school, light up a joint and pass it around. Man, we were really cool back in those days. And nowadays, you know, somebody like me, I don't want anything to do with mind-altering drugs, including alcohol. Seen as just a real square bear from nowhere. So this is a hard uphill fight. Now, the thrust of this article is this, that the marijuana that people started smoking back in the 70s when marijuana really hit the main street had about 2% of THC. Some of the stuff you can buy now gets up close to 100%.
Wow.
And it's just not something to trifle with. This article goes into the way marijuana is made, or the way these marijuana products are made. Now, back in the day, you know, everybody would have a dealer, and the dealer would bring over a little bit of marijuana. You give them $10 or $20, however much it was, and, you know, you roll it up and smoke it, etc. Well, the process is described in this article. They saturate it with various kinds of really noxious substances, like where did I see that? Yeah. Putting pulverized marijuana into a tube and running butane, propane, ethanol, or carbon dioxide through it. So you crush the marijuana into very small particles, put in a tube, and then run butane, propane, or ethanol, or carbon dioxide through the tube. That separates the THC from the rest of the plant. You throw the plant away. The end product is a wax that can be 70 to 80% THC. That wax then can be put in a vacuum oven and further concentrated into oils that are as much as 95% or even 99% THC. Known as dabs, this is what people put in their vape pens. And in states like Colorado and California, it's totally legal and easily available to children. So the point here is that you think you know a lot about marijuana because you used to do it. You've been doing it all along. You've been doing it all your life and you aren't dead yet, right? Well, that's changed because now marijuana, this high potency marijuana is available, and this article describes all of the psychotic bad effects it can have. The article also points out that big tobacco and big alcohol are getting into the marijuana business. I saw an ad the other day for some kind of a drink that contained THC. And the article's a little pejorative. It said that big tobacco and big alcohol are trying to convince you that, you know, it's not a problem. You don't have to worry about it. So winding up the article, as a teenager, Kevin Bright suffered from depression and anxiety. He started smoking pot at around 15 years old to self-medicate. As his tolerance built up, he started using THC concentrates, the stuff made from those high-potency waxes and oils, which was legal and easily available in the Bay Area suburb where he grew up. His personality began to unravel, his father, Bart, told me. He was constantly irate. He attempted suicide several times, once by ingesting pills, once by trying to hang himself, and another time by driving his car into the bay. Then he began developing full-blown delusions, imagining that the FBI was after him. When he called his parents, he would scream at them in gibberish. Eventually, at 29 years old, he put a plastic bag over his head and breathed nitrous oxide through a tube until he suffocated to death. Wow. Now, there is one clarification I got to make here. This is really serious stuff. And this is a public service that I'm laying this out for you because it's not going to be popular. You know, it's not going to be popular to say, you know, you guys that are out there smoking marijuana, there's something that's really dangerous that you need to know about. And then, like I said yesterday, you're going, yeah, I saw Reefer Madness on TV one time. Yeah, it's not as bad as, you know, all that stuff. But I think the rules have changed. Now, one thing I did think I should mention, I got a little confused here when I read this sentence. I said, there's a definite withdrawal syndrome that includes irritability, anger, and anxiety. And I thought, gosh, is Bernie Sanders smoking this stuff?
It's true.
It sounds like him. Irritability, anger, and anxiety. Oh, well, you know, all the money goes to the rich people. All right, going on to the next item on the card here, which is Keneal Weird versus another windmill. And I've got Keneal Weird's press release. In case you didn't get it in the mail, watch PNC because they'll run it verbatim and call it the news. A federal district court in Hawaii has dismissed Bora v. Nego, a lawsuit brought by individuals living in Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands who are challenging overseas voting laws that would allow them to vote for president and have voting representation in Congress based on their prior residence in Hawaii if they lived anywhere else outside the 50 states, including Northern Mariana Islands. Now let me explain what this is about, because you'll never gain any understanding from reading Neil's propaganda here. There is a statute, a federal statute called UCAVA, Uniform Overseas Citizens Voting Act or something like that. And what it says is this, that if you ever lived in one of the 50 and then you moved to a foreign country, you could vote absentee in the state in which you live. I think I talked about this a little yesterday.
Yesterday, but you've mentioned it time before.
A lot of times, yeah. So as an example, if I were to move from here to Japan, I could have the election authorities in Wisconsin send me a ballot for the first congressional district in Wisconsin. I could vote for the candidate for the first district. If it's a senatorial year, I could vote for senator. If it's a presidential year, I could vote for president. Even though I told the guys in Wisconsin, I'm here. In Japan, I'm never going back to Wisconsin. I'm never going to go back to the States. I sold all of my stuff. I burned my high school diploma. I put my driver's license in the I don't have anything that's even colorably a residence. I don't follow Wisconsin politics. Send me a ballot anyhow. And they would. Now, this UCAVA, as far as I'm concerned, is unconstitutional, but we'll just proceed on the basis that we're not interested in that right now. So that's the law. Now, if I lived in Wisconsin and I moved to Guam, I would not be able to vote in Wisconsin. If I lived in Guam and I moved to Wisconsin, I would not be able to vote in Guam. If I lived in Guam and moved to Japan, I would be able to vote in Guam, absentee, UCAVA, right? Now, there's one interesting wrinkle here, and that's this, that if I move from Wisconsin to Chalankanoa in the beautiful island of Saipan in the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, UCAVA would apply and I could vote. A strange thing. And the reason that it came out like that is because when UCAVA was drafted, there was no CNMI. The islands that we call the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands were the Marianas District of the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. So UCAVA defines states like this. the 50, the 4 territories that were extant at the time, the District of Columbia, were all defined as states. And the statute says if you move from one state to another, you can't vote. You have to vote in the state in which you live. But because the CNMI came along after UCAVA, it wasn't defined as a state. And I suspect that when the Congress got around to bringing in the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, no bright congressman says, hey, wait a minute, we've got to change UCAVA. Now, it was too obscure. It was the last thing from their minds. So if you move, believe it or not, if you move from Guam to CNMI, you could vote absentee in Guam. Now, that's something that somebody could clean up, but who wants to spend political capital on such a minor event as that? Certainly not the delegate from the CNMI. Now, there's an interesting wrinkle to this story, and that's this, that I understand, I haven't been able to nail this down, but I've heard that there were people in the CNMI who figured, let's try this. We were in California. We could vote absentee in California. So they did. And the ballot hardly got to the polling place before California taxation authorities were breathing down these guys' necks. Hey, you owe California income tax. Well, taxing people are going to go out and try to find taxpayers. So, common sense tells you if a guy voted in the state, he lives in the state. If he lives in the state, he's got to pay state income tax. It's wrong, but it's not going to stop the taxation authorities from giving it a try. Now, I don't know what the law is on that point, whether it would be, I suspect that they wouldn't be liable for the taxation, but who wants to churn up $4,000 or $5,000 worth of attorney's fees?
That's where the settlements come into play.
Exactly, yeah. So that's UCAVA in a nutshell. It's a screwy law. Congress does not have the ability to do that. If you look at the appropriate sections of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, for example, says that the people, that each state shall be entitled to members of the House in accordance with the decennial census chosen by the people of each state, not chosen by the United States Congress, which is what it turned out to be. But it's on the books. Hard to find anybody who would want to challenge it. So it's probably going to stay there for a long time. Now, Weir tried this once before, and he lost the last time. I guess he's filing it in, he's a different circuit. He's in the Ninth Circuit this time around. So he's going to try it again. So I'll read his article, and I'll come back and beat up on him a little bit more. Keneal Weir. A federal district court in Hawaii has dismissed Bora versus Nago, a lawsuit brought by individuals living in Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands who are challenging overseas voting laws that would allow them to vote for president and have voting representation in Congress based on their prior residence in Hawaii if they lived anywhere else outside the 50 states, including the Northern Marianas. So what Weir really wants is, what he's bitching about is this. Congress didn't treat us like a foreign country. That's really what he's saying. We want to be treated like a foreign country so that people moving from the 50 here can continue to vote by absentee ballot. He goes on to say, while limitations on voter eligibility are typically subjected to strict scrutiny, and I've gone through that before with you, the court held that such limitations when applied to overseas voting are only subject to rational basis review, which means that if a lawyer can hypothesize a rational basis for doing it, it's okay, even if the people who passed the law didn't have the foggiest idea of what that rational basis was. As a result, the court ruled that Congress and state legislatures could selectively withhold overseas voting rights from former state residents who move to certain disfavored territories while extending them to those who move to certain favored territories or foreign countries. You see the gaslighting going on here by the deliberate choice of words? And it's not favored. There's only one favored territory, and that's the CNMI, for the reasons that I just explained to you. You don't see Neil Weir lobbying Congress, take it away from the CNMI. Let's be fair to the rest of the territories. No. He goes on to say, when legislatures selectively exclude some people from being eligible to vote, while including others who are similarly situated, that should be subject to the court's highest level of judicial scrutiny. Neil Weir said, no. Neil Weir, president and founder of Equally American, which represents the plaintiffs in the case and is also an organizational plaintiff. It also defies reason to protect the right to vote for president for people who move from a state to the Northern Marianas, but to deny that right to people who move to Guam, another territory less than 150 miles away. Where you live shouldn't affect your right to vote. Classic Neil Weir statement. He used to say, do you think your rights should depend on what your zip code is? Plaintiffs are also represented by Vanessa Williams. I guess she found time in her always busy schedule and her panoply of choices to do this. Virgin Islands attorney Pamela Colon, former Guam resident T.J. Kwan, and a team of other pro bono attorneys. Plaintiffs will decide whether to appeal the case to the Ninth Circuit in coming weeks. Now, I haven't had a chance to go through the decision. I have scoped out the decision. The judge is not kind to Neil Weir at all. She's not kind to these folks.
It seems like a really inconsistent goal here he's trying to do. So want Guam to be foreign or Guam to be, what's the other word, the opposite of foreign?
Domestic.
Domestic.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Well, and then once again, Neil Weir he's kind of like Levin. It wasn't what Levin did, it's what he didn't do when he found out that void initio and he stopped looking. The guy who tried to help me find my keys, not where my car was, but down the street because the light was so much better. That's Weir. So he doesn't examine he doesn't say, well, if I won, what would the consequences be? So let's just examine the consequences. If Weir won, then everybody who's living here now, whoever lives somewhere else, that'd be you, Jose, would be able to vote absentee in the last place that he lives. All he has to do is furnish the street address of the last place that he lived. He would get an absentee ballot. He could vote that absentee ballot. He could still vote here on the island. No harm, no foul. So we'd have literally thousands of people here that can vote in the local election and vote in the national election. Not a good system at all. And then if you wanted to be, if you want to be an equity type folks, what you'd say is, the rich folks, the ones that, went to school off island or whatever, they're the only ones that get to vote there. Those of us who are stuck on this island all our lives, we only get to vote. It's just not fair. But more important than that is this. What good would it do us? Because, our voters, we'd have all those people who would vote for people who would help Guam. Well, the voters would literally be scattered around the 50 states. I mean, the votes would be literally scattered around the 50 states. So what candidate is going to say, I'm going to go to Guam now because Neil Weir won that case and there are a lot of people living on Guam that can vote in national elections. Which one? Well, it's California and Florida. It would do us no good. It would be just one more thing that would divide us. And I have a feeling that if the separatists ever really stopped and figured out what their rap is, they'd be against it, because it's one more argument that people on Guam are not totally disfranchised. Okay, so we're going to go to Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch. And in the meantime, I've got Harold and Kellis. Harold wants to talk about experience on voting from foreign lands, and Kellis wants to talk about military voting. Wrigley Field.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Does your physical workplace have an impact on the mental outlook of workers, their overall job satisfaction, and their productivity? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about that and what you might want to do about it. It's The Extra Point here on 93.3.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh brings you the sequel to the Sweet Onion Chicken Teriyaki. Enjoy the new Sweet Onion Steak Teriyaki. Delight your taste buds with tender, juicy steak marinated in the tangy new Sweet Onion Teriyaki sauce and stacked high on toasted artisan Italian bread, topped with American cheese, green peppers, red onions, and drizzled with the tangy new Sweet Onion Teriyaki sauce. The new Sweet Onion Steak Teriyaki is the height of food craveability. Give in to your cravings at Subway. Eat fresh.
So here we are at Wrigley Field. I noticed that guy, Mr. Culligan, somehow drove his red truck out onto the field at Wrigley Field. But Frenchie's out there calling him out. Good for Frenchie. Thank you, Frenchie. Frenchie helped us out twice today on the show. Okay, so I've got Harold who wants to, let's see, Harold wanted to talk about experience on voting from foreign lands. Tell us about it, Harold.
Hello, how are you today?
How are you, Harold? Tell us about voting in foreign lands.
Okay, I was when I was in the Marine Corps in 1960 in Okinawa, and when I turned 21 in 1963, I was found out I was still registered to vote in they automatically registered me to vote in Oregon because I turned 21. So I sent away for the forms, and on that form that I had to fill out, they wanted to know if I was registered to vote any place else.
Yep.
I said no, so I got to vote from by the ballot and being in the military. Then when I moved to Guam in 1972, I went down to register to vote, and they asked me if the forms I filled out there asked me if I was registered to vote in any place else. At that time, I came here from California. I was registered to vote in California. And they told me at the election office down there that they would be sending a form or something, a letter to California telling me I was registered to vote in Guam, and then I could not vote for president in California because I did not have a residence anymore. If I would have kept a residence in California, I would have been able to vote for president. And same thing today. All these people talking about, oh, I can't vote for president. That's not that big a thing. If they want to vote for president, all they got to do is register in California or any state. But if they do that, then that's supposed to vote on Guam.
Well, let me give you a little bit of, let's turn on the Law and Order notebook here, Jose. In order to legally register in a state, you have to live there. You have to be a resident of that state.
That's right.
So if you move from California to Guam, you can't legally register, or you can't continue to maintain your registration in California, because you got to live there in order to be in compliance with the law.
That's true, but as long as you keep a address in California, maybe at my sister's house or something, as far as they know, I'm still there. They don't know I'm on Guam.
A lot of times here on the show, Harold, I will go into the law as a public service, tell people what the law is, what the law isn't, but I never counsel people to violate the law. So what you're talking about then would be violating the law. And
but the way you explained it, how you vote from another country and everything, if you lived here and you moved there, and you can still, you can still vote in Wisconsin or wherever it is. You can't. You have to have a residence.
Well, I have gone into this federal statute called UCAVA.
I went through that.
So UCAVA is not applicable to everyone. It's only applicable to those who move from the 50 states to a foreign country.
Yeah.
So if I move to a foreign country and say I moved to the Philippines, and for one reason or another I could vote there, and I could vote in Wisconsin. But
because then you'd be violating the law.
Yes, I could. That's the point I'm trying to drive home here.
Yeah, but you would still need a
Harold,
residence address.
we have a convention here on the show. You and I talk, but only one of us talks at a time. Okay.
Well, sometimes you don't give anybody a chance to talk.
So I'm explaining to you what UCAVA, what it means.
I know what it means.
What it deals with people who live in foreign countries.
Yeah.
If a person lives in a foreign country and lived in one of the 50 states, he can vote at the last address in which he lived, even though he would not ordinarily be eligible to vote absentee, even if he's voting in the foreign country. And that's why I'm saying this UCAVA is an anomaly, and as far as I'm concerned, it's unconstitutional.
It's not really enforceable. I tried to use that when I was up in Okinawa to vote on Guam, and Guam told me no. That was probably 20 years ago.
Was it UCAVA the law at the time?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Because UCAVA's been everything. Ever since I was first joined the Marine Corps in 1960, as far as I know, it was still in effect.
Jose?
Because I could not register. Okinawa or Guam would not take my registration to vote.
Harold,
they would not send me a ballot because...
I think maybe, this is Jose, I think maybe a distinction has to be made between active duty and living in a foreign land as a civilian. Is there different rules for active duty?
When I was involved with the Guam one, I was not on active duty.
Harold, slow down a little bit. What did you say, Jose?
No, I was just wondering if there was an active duty component to how you're able to vote.
Well, the UCAVA also gets into absentee voting, just pure absentee voting. And you have to distinguish absentee voting from UCAVA voting. Absentee voting means you're voting in the place where you actually live, even though you don't happen to be there at the time, because you're in the Army or something like that. And there's a strict procedure for that. UCAVA picks up on that, and it sets some dates and timelines and things like that. But it's a totally different animal for civilians living in foreign countries voting in the last place they lived in the 50. Okay, Harold.
Okay, good luck with it.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Kellis and I've got Dr. Ron McNinch. Wow, this is an interesting topic. Go for it, Kellis.
Hey, Judge. So, yes, I voted. So I voted in Guam my whole Air Force career almost, except for 2 years when I first joined Hawaii. But so everywhere I've gone, I voted. I was still a resident of Guam as an active duty military member. I was allowed to vote in Guam, and so that was the 1 year I didn't actually vote. I was in Baghdad, and my ballot came 3 months after the election.
Well,
because the mail was
you
so
could have
slow.
you could have for sure voted for the winner then, Kellis.
Yes, I thought about that. I could have had a guaranteed 100% got everybody, but I don't think my vote would have counted.
Maybe not.
Yeah. But so that's what I was going to say. Well, active duty, as long now, it changes. If you wanted to, for example, if you get stationed in Alaska, and you're from California, you get stationed in Alaska. If you change your residency to Alaska, then they pay you, because.
Sure.
But then as long as you consistently thereafter say, I'm using that address.
Mm-hmm.
Alaska or Texas. A lot of people, when they got to Texas, they put down Texas because state income taxes.
Yeah, well, military service is one of the exceptions to the law of domicile and residence. So you could be gone for 20 years and still continue to vote absentee. The absentee voting thing has been in place for a long, long time. And it's unfortunate that this UCAVA thing came along because it's a totally different undertaking and it makes very little sense.
I didn't know that if you're up in CNMI that you could still do it because as a resident of the CNMI, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I explained the reason I think that it's that way, right?
Yes, I heard that, and like I said, it just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to be a resident of a place, it's like, for example, if I wanted to change my residency from Guam while I was in the military, I could have been in Florida, Texas, Colorado, etc. But no, Guam is home, so I got to vote in the agate while I was in, Iraq and Korea and all those other places.
Okay, well.
Okay, Judge. You have a good day.
Good talking to you, Kellis. And I've got Ron McNench who wants to talk about voting. Go for it, Ron.
Hey, Hapaday Cinder, Hapaday Guam. Yeah, if I recall, UCAVA is from the mid-1980s, at least UCAVA as we currently refer to it. And then I guess in subsequent years, and by the way, it's a very old concept about absentee voting for people who don't live in the United States proper. But yeah.
Wait a minute, Ron. It's not about people who don't live in the United States property. It's people who don't happen to be in the United States. Big difference. Because until UCAVA came along, we never allowed people who didn't live in the United States to vote in elections.
Okay. I understand you on that point.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was going to say something else really quickly about the American Samoa case and the Neil Weir case. I wish people would go back to the original treaty with American Samoa in 1900. Unlike most other U.S. territories, there's a treaty of chiefs that govern that relationship. It's a treaty approved by the U.S. Senate. One key thing, in 1950, around the time, 1949, 1950, the United States Senate and I think the Congress in general wanted to grant American Samoa the exact same Organic Act and the exact same citizenship rights that it was going to give to Guam at the time. And the people of American Samoa, along with their chiefs, pretty much shot it down. They totally rejected it. They didn't want the U.S. system. They wanted to keep their traditional governing system. And so, in fact, when you talk to the people in American Samoa today, they don't like it that people are trying to change their system. If they wanted to change their system, they'd go to Congress and change it. And Congress in a heartbeat would give American Samoa an Organic Act and American citizenship if they wanted to change their system to have birthright citizenship.
Well, the thing is that back in 1950, the Congress only checked with the folks in American Samoa. They didn't get Neil Weir's clearance on it.
That probably matters a lot.
Yeah, even though you guys don't want American citizenship, we're going to get it for you. And then this whole thing was trying to get a judicial ruling that Guam should be treated like a foreign country for UCAVA purposes. It makes about as much sense as most of the stuff he undertakes.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because if Guam really wanted to advance its political rights, there's a template, there's a formula. Anyone can pick up the Guam Secret Study at the university at Mark and pick up basically the template to do that. We ask the president for a special representative. We negotiate with Congress. There's a number of very rational steps we could do, and nobody seems to really want to do the things that actually work.
Well, there are unfortunately a large number of people on this island that would much rather bitch than be happy.
I certainly agree, sir. Hey, have a great day.
Good talking to you, Ron. Okay, so much for Equally American and Neil Weir. If you get his newsletter, he'll tell you how you can contribute to his group, Equally American. So we're going to head for Churchill Downs. When we come back from Churchill Downs, we'll go to Calamity Jane versus Christians.
Day. This is Clara Manglania from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Okay, so here we are in the home stretch at Tall Tales, 6 furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line, wrapping up another exciting, elucidating, educational episode of Tall Tales. The title of the next bout is Calamity Jane versus Christians. And it's based on an article, as you were, in a column of Pacific Island Times. I got to do my Rush Limbaugh imitation here again, Jose. Oh, you know, Jose, I don't like to talk about myself on the show, but this time I have to because it's about me. Yeah, I wrote the article in the column in the Pacific Island Times. Now, the article starts out by setting out Jane Flores' post on the BWA, the Bureau of Women's Affairs website, on July 5. And in order to understand the column, I'm going to have to read that Facebook post into the record. Here's how it goes. If you're a Christian who's happy about Roe versus Wade getting overturned, I'd like to remind you that the purpose of your religion is not to judge or condemn others. You can remain seated. You don't have to kneel during this. Your job as a Christian is to evangelize through your actions and way of life. That joy you're feeling from Roe versus Wade getting overturned isn't because God has worked. What you're feeling is a perverted sense of satisfaction, not because you've, quote, saved lives, but because you were able to exert control over other people. You're feeling powerful and vindicated because you didn't want someone to do something and acted your own will on them. Your joy isn't about God. It's about making yourself feel just. When you lay down in bed tonight, all alone and in the dark, listen to your spirit. Maybe we should get, what was her name? Amor?
Dulce Amor.
Dulce Amor, yeah. Help us out here, right? Yeah. Listen to your spirit. What you'll feel tonight may just be the devil smiling at the corner of your bed because he knows that you like the feeling he gave you today. So the first 4 words here, 5 words, if you are a Christian. So this is the official government Facebook page for the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Now here's what I wrote about it. Jane Flores, the director of the so-called Bureau of Women's Affairs, is all in for abortion. Let me read that again. All in for abortion, but opposed to the doctrine of separation of church and state. Consider the screenshot of the item set out above, which appeared in the Bureau of Women's Affairs official Facebook page on July 5. Flores goes to some lengths to tell Christians what their job is, what they can and cannot be happy about, not to condemn or judge, and so on ad nauseum. Intense perusal of the organic statute under which Ms. Flores operates, which is 5 GCA, Chapter 1, Article 8, reveals that at a minimum she is ultra-virus her authority per statute, as there's no language whatsoever authorizing Ms. Flores to engage in religious instruction. More serious is Flores' violation of the Organic Act. Section 48 U.S.C. Section 1421B, Bill of Rights. A, no law shall be enacted in Guam respecting an establishment of religion, and so on. Respecting an establishment of religion. This is a matter, and also the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, the Establishment Clause is cited. This is a matter that cannot be taken lightly, dealing as it does with a breach in the wall of separation between church and state. Governor Leon Guerrero, by her apparent acquiescence to Flores' conduct, endorsed it. You didn't hear the governor coming out and saying, I want to set the record straight. You know, we don't have an established religion here. Christianity is not the established religion of the territory of Guam. We have no established religion. And any government official should know better than saying what Ms. Flores said. She has been cautioned to never do it again. That's what the governor should have done. But, of course, we have the Vanessa Williams approach to things like that. Well, it was just, it's just Jane, right? Here's one of the legal requirements for the bois that Flores didn't adhere to. 5 GCA Section 1805, committees, formations. The director shall advertise throughout the government of Guam and the private sector for interested persons wishing to participate on committees to effectuate the purposes of the Bureau. She's supposed to round up these committees to tell her what to do. The Board of Advisors appointed by the governor pursuant to Executive Order 87-14 shall organize the Bureau's structure. Now, if you think if she had done this, the Bureau structure would have been included an Office of Abortion and an Office of Abortion Litigation. I don't think so. Organize the Bureau structure and shall establish the organization of the Bureau and the committees necessary to further the work of the Bureau. Had Flores followed the law, the committee might have steered her to President Thomas Jefferson's famous statement about the wall of separation between church and state. In 1802, Jefferson wrote this prescription to Baptists of Danbury, Connecticut, quote, believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. He goes on a little bit after that. Flores is salaried at $90,000 a year total pay, 90,000 plus total pay. She's appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature and a member of the governor's cabinet. What Flores did is not the, quote, job of any GovGuam employee or officer. Democrat de rigueur attempts to excuse Flores' Organic Act and constitutional violations with, quote, oh, that's just Jane's personal opinion. Don't work here any better than they did for the Blacklist 12. Vanessa Williams went out and blacklisted 12 Democrat senatorial candidates. Nobody apologized to the candidates. Nobody said it was wrong. Everybody came back and said, well, you know, she has a right to her own opinion, too. The fact that she's the lawyer for the Democrat Party doesn't mean she doesn't have freedom of speech.
Wrong.
So I'm going to make a bold statement here and invite people to correct me. If you hold a visible government position, everything that you say in public has to be seen as ex cathedra. In other words, whatever you say is chargeable to you as the director, board member, or whatever. You can't say, well, this is just my own personal opinion. Not if you're the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Okay, so that kind of lays out the case. And then finally, I'm going to borrow a page from Jane's book because I'm not a government official. Finally, here's some religious instruction that Flores might take to heart. Jesus instructs, quote, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Now, you know, in a rational world, Flores would have set the record straight. She would have gone on the same place. You know, if you insult somebody in person, you don't send them a letter by postal mail. You apologize in person. If you send a nasty letter to somebody and you think it was wrong, you send a letter, and so on. She put it on Facebook. I suspect she offended a lot of Christians, telling them that they were not good Christians. But she shouldn't be addressing Christians at all. How people practice their faith is none of her damn business. So instead of just taking it down and kind of pretending it didn't happen, she should have gone on the next day and cleared the air. If she thinks the air, maybe she thinks, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to say, and it's correct, and I'm not walking it back no matter what. Even if the governor tells me to walk it back, I ain't going to do it. So that was Calamity Jane versus Christians. It's just about time for me to say it. Yeah, it's exactly time. Okay, let's go, Brandon. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Now 4 dead in Memphis shooting spree. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Police say a 19-year-old man drove around for several hours shooting at people, apparently at random, at 8 different crime scenes. The shooter live streaming at least one of them on social media.
He starts off the video by saying he's already killed 5 people. From there, he rants about the different violent acts that he's done over time. The finale of that video was him walking into that AutoZone store. You can see the man put his hands up, and then you hear the gunshots, and that's where the video ends.
Kayla Solomon of Fox 13 in Memphis, the teenage suspect caught after wrecking his car during a police chase. He was already wanted on a murder warrant. The second suspect in a deadly weekend stabbing spree in Canada is dead. Police say Miles Sanderson died from injuries he inflicted on himself as police surrounded him. He and his brother Damien, who was found dead Monday, are thought responsible for the murders of 10 people in an indigenous community in the Canadian province of Saskatchewan. Police haven't said what motivated them. In Las Vegas, Clark County Public Administrator Rob Tellis has been arrested for the murder of Las Vegas Review-Journal investigative reporter Jeff Gearman.
Tellis lost his re-election bid in June's primary following a series of reports by Gearman in which current and former employees alleged Tellis created a hostile working environment and that the married father of 3 had an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate staffer.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt. Gearman had been found stabbed to death outside his home. A Department of Homeland Security Inspector General's report says the Biden administration may have put national security at risk by not fully vetting Afghan refugees who were allowed into the U.S. after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. The report says some information in government databases used to vet the evacuees was inaccurate, incomplete, or missing. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 America's Newsroom on Fox News Channel, returns to the world of audio with a new limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay with Dana Perino. Building off the success of her best-selling book of the same name, Dana provides an unequaled brand of advice built on real-life experience and interviews experts